If you've ever been truly traumatized by someone, not just uncomfortable, not just annoyed, but shattered on a deep psychological level, you don't forget. You remember exactly where you were. The light in the room, the look in their eyes, what you were wearing, the way the air felt heavy. It's not a foggy memory, it's crystal clear. So when someone, especially someone as powerful, wealthy, and image-conscious as Blake Lively, suddenly claims trauma yet can't recall the setting, the time, or a single detail, and instead insists she needs to watch over 100 hours of footage to remember what happened, that's not a red flag, that's an entire alarm system. And that's the exact situation playing out right now in the very public, very messy legal battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. A case that was already explosive is now revealing its most cynical and disturbing layers. Because it's not just about a personal dispute anymore, it's about narrative control, reputation laundering, weaponizing trauma, and possibly manufacturing it. There was a new court filing just made public, and it's a bombshell. According to legal documents filed by the Wayfarer party, that's Baldoni's side, Blake Lively has still not scheduled her deposition. She's stalling. But even more suspicious is what she's asking for. Her team is demanding access to all the raw footage from the project they're battling over, including scenes Blake Lively wasn't even present for. Her reasoning: she claims she needs to see the footage before she testifies under oath. Let that sink in. Blake Lively, a veteran actress, a public figure, and someone claiming to have been harassed on set, says she doesn't remember when it happened. She says she can't recount the moment unless she reviews the footage first, not just her scenes, but footage where she wasn't even on set. Why? Well, according to Baldoni's legal team, the reason is as chilling as it is calculated. Blake Lively wants to dig through the footage to try to find something she can use. Something she can reframe, twist, repackage, a fleeting gesture, a line of dialogue, a glance. Anything she can weaponize. Because if the footage itself doesn't already support her claims, she'll build a narrative from it. This is what they're alleging, that Blake Lively is not searching for the truth, she's building a story. And it gets worse, she's done it before. When Blake first accused Baldoni of misconduct, she pointed to a kissing scene, claiming she was uncomfortable and that something happened off camera. She also stated there was no behind-the-scenes audio that the footage wouldn't support or disprove her account. But there was audio, there was footage, and it showed nothing. Not a single frame that supported her claims. The entire scene, including the pre-roll and post-roll, was normal, professional, and benign. That moment exposed something: a dangerous willingness to fabricate. And now, facing a deposition, she's trying to make sure she doesn't walk into another trap. She wants to know exactly what footage exists so she doesn't make up another story that can be disproven. But what does that tell us? It tells us she's not worried about recounting what happened. She's worried about what the cameras caught. This isn't just about a legal defense. It's about spinning a new narrative under oath, and that's exactly what Baldoni's legal team is trying to stop. They've cited court precedent cases where judges blocked access to footage ahead of a deposition specifically to avoid witnesses tailoring their testimony to the video evidence, because that's exactly what Blake is trying to do, and she's not the only one. Stephanie Jones, the woman who ran the company Blake is accusing of orchestrating a smear campaign, is also trying to delay her deposition for similar reasons. But that raises even more questions. Jones allegedly handed Blake sensitive material from another employee's phone. She allegedly greenlit moves that led to this exact legal fight. And now she too is suddenly unable to recall details until she watches the footage. It's not just evasive, it's orchestrated, and the hypocrisy is staggering. Because while Blake Lively and her camp insist on holding Justin Baldoni accountable for everything that happened under Wayfarer's watch, even things he had no direct hand in, they refuse to accept accountability for the parts they ran. Remember, Blake was in the editing room. She took over creative control. She didn't just star in the film, she molded it. And her husband, Ryan Reynolds, he funded it, marketed it, and built the campaign that ultimately backfired. These weren't passive participants, they were the architects. And yet now, as their carefully crafted reputations start to crumble, they're desperately trying to flip the script. They're blaming Baldoni, blaming Wayfarer, blaming the press, blaming content creators. Yes, you read that right. In a stunning twist, 3 high-profile content creators, Paris Hilton, Candace Owens, and Andy Signore, were served subpoenas in what many are calling a clear intimidation stunt. The kicker: they found out through TMZ. That's right, the media got the subpoenas before the people did. How? Because someone leaked them. And there's only one side who benefits from that leak. This wasn't about legal necessity. This was about distraction, redirection, undermining independent voices who've been exposing the holes in Blake Lively's story since day one. And the reason is clear: content creators are easy targets. They're not protected by the same institutions that shield journalists. They don't have corporate lawyers or editorial boards they can't subpoena back. They can't fight the same way, and so they become scapegoats in a high-stakes game of media chess. Meanwhile, the mainstream press, People magazine, the New York Times, TMZ continue to push Blake's narrative with little scrutiny, but cracks are forming. Whistleblowers are talking, reporters are being pressured. One journalist who previously covered the case for the Daily Mail was allegedly forced to sign a false sworn statement and was quietly fired weeks later. The illusion is crumbling because this isn't just about one actress and one director. This is about a Hollywood power couple using every tool at their disposal, wealth, fame, media control, to protect their image. Even if it means rewriting history, even if it means discrediting victims, even if it means inventing trauma for PR, and the most terrifying part, it's working. But not for long. If you've ever truly been traumatized by someone, the memory doesn't fade. You remember the day, you remember the environment, you remember everything. It's seared into your psyche. So when someone suddenly claims trauma years later but can't pinpoint any details and demands to watch hours of footage to jog their memory, people start asking questions. And that's exactly what's happening in the latest chapter of the high-profile legal battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, a case that has grown to entangle Ryan Reynolds, Stephanie Jones, Wayfarer Studios, and now even content creators. In a new filing, Baldoni's legal team called out Blake Lively for stalling. She still hasn't scheduled her deposition despite the court-ordered timeline rapidly approaching. And more than that, her team is demanding access to all the raw footage from the film they're fighting over. That includes footage she wasn't even present for. Why? According to the filing, her legal team wants her to be able to view all material in advance of her deposition. But the opposing side is raising a red flag. This isn't about preparation, it's about manipulation. Lively originally claimed there were over 50,000 hours of footage. That would amount to over 280 days of non-stop filming, which is obviously false. Baldoni's team has clarified that there are fewer than 150 hours of usable footage, and yet, Blake wants to comb through every minute, even scenes that don't involve her, which has prompted a sharp and frankly damning response from the Wayfarer legal team. Their argument's simple: if someone actually endured trauma on a set, they'd remember when it happened. They wouldn't need to sift through footage of other people's scenes in hopes of remembering a traumatic event. They're alleging that Blake is hoping to find a clip, any clip that she can twist or reframe into a new accusation. The tactic is familiar: build a narrative after the fact, reverse engineer a memory based on what's visible, and create a media moment to weaponize in court. And this isn't hypothetical, this is exactly what happened before. When Blake previously accused Baldoni of misconduct during a kissing scene, she said there was no audio of the incident. But there was. Not only was the scene filmed, but behind the scenes, audio was rolling. The result: the footage showed nothing inappropriate. In fact, it undermined her entire claim. That moment was pivotal, and it's why this time she wants to make sure she's seen everything before she opens her mouth under oath. The lawyers saw this coming. That's why they're asking the court not to allow it. As they pointed out, courts have long denied the release of video and audio material to witnesses before depositions in order to prevent them from conforming their testimony to what's visible in the footage. It's about preserving the integrity of their sworn statements, not about letting someone preview the material so they can edit their narrative to match. Blake's attempt to view the footage isn't just suspicious, it's strategic. It's a defense tactic rooted in control, not memory. And here's the part that makes it even more absurd. She's already seen this footage. Not only was she involved in editing the film, she reportedly took control of the editing process, wresting creative power away from Baldoni. Her fingerprints are on every frame. The situation gets murkier when you factor in Stephanie Jones, who is also attempting to delay her deposition under similar pretenses. But the connection here is direct. Jones ran the company Lively is accusing of launching a smear campaign. She oversaw operations, and she allegedly handed over private content from another employee's phone to Blake, bypassing any internal review or protocol. Her claim that she needs to see hours of footage to remember events is laughable. Responsibility has to be consistent. If Justin Baldoni is being held accountable for everything under the Wayfarer umbrella, then Blake and Stephanie, who wielded even more day-to-day control, should be held to the same standard. And let's not forget Ryan Reynolds, who seems to hover just behind the scenes, always insulated, yet always implicated. Speaking of Reynolds, a resurfaced interview from Variety has taken on new relevance. In a conversation with Andrew Garfield, he discusses his philosophy on creative failure. He said they're not writing the story about how Phyllis Von Philistine bombs. They're using the actor's name. I own the bomb. So if I'm going to bomb, I want to be the architect of my own demise. That quote, "I want to be the architect of my own demise," reveals everything about how Ryan operates. Control is everything. He wants full authorship over a success, but also over a failure. The irony, he was very much the architect of the current PR disaster. The film It Ends With Us was a chaotic production from start to finish, marketing a mess, public perception abysmal. And even though the movie earned some box office numbers, Blake Lively's career took a huge hit. The public rejected the narrative and someone had to take the fall. Instead of owning it, Ryan and Blake turned on Wayfarer and Baldoni, casting them as villains in the aftermath. That narrative had to be built carefully though, and quickly. Because time wasn't on their side, audiences were seeing through the glossy press releases and staged apologies. And when that began to unravel, the focus shifted again, this time to content creators. Perez Hilton, Candace Owens, Indy Signore, all three were subpoenaed in what many now call a blatant PR stunt. Why? Because going after journalists would have been too risky. The press could push back. The press could investigate. The press might expose their cozy relationships with major outlets, including People magazine, TMZ, and even the New York Times. Let's not forget those subpoenas were leaked to TMZ before the content creators themselves even received them. That's not legal strategy, that's media manipulation. And where did TMZ get the documents? There's only one answer: Blake's team wanted them to have it. It was a calculated leak designed to control the narrative before the people involved could respond. This strategy of targeting creators isn't about justice, it's about optics. It's a way to discredit independent voices, the same ones Ryan Reynolds once relied on to build his own digital empire. Now those platforms are being silenced, bullied, and dragged into a legal war that isn't theirs. Meanwhile, more stories are surfacing from people who've worked directly with Blake Lively. One former cast member from the rhythm section recalled her experience in striking detail. She described the atmosphere as tense, blaming Lively's presence for constant delays. According to her, Blake was rude, dismissive, and made no attempt to engage with the cast. She refused to rehearse scenes, she avoided eye contact. She gave off an energy that was cold and unwelcoming enough that this actor said she had to leave the set and wait in the hallway just to avoid being near her. And this is a pattern. This is consistent with other accounts, crew members, co-stars, background talent, all echoing similar stories about Blake's behavior behind the scenes. The sweet, polished public image doesn't line up with what's being described by those who've seen her when the cameras aren't rolling. So when the public sees this latest legal delay, a sudden need to view hundreds of hours of footage before testifying under oath, it doesn't feel like justice. It feels like damage control. It feels like someone trying to find a way to rewrite a story that's already unraveling. The same story they spent millions trying to manufacture. The same story they used to shield themselves from accountability and to tear others down in the process, and now it's slipping away. The footage Blake wants to see isn't about her trauma, it's about protecting her brand. The subpoenas aren't about truth, they're about silencing criticism. And the interviews, leaks, and carefully placed media exclusives, they're just chess moves in a game that's starting to fall apart, because the truth isn't in the narrative they wrote. It's in the cracks they're trying to seal shut. So let's zoom out for a second, because this isn't just a legal dispute. This is a pattern of control. The legal filings, the footage requests, the last-minute subpoenas, they're not isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a system Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have come to depend on, a system that protects image over integrity, that shields public figures from consequences, that allows the rich and famous to rewrite their reputations, even if the truth gets flattened in the process. Let's go back to the footage for a moment. Blake Lively wants to view over 100 hours of raw content from a film she helped edit, and claims it's necessary for her to remember what happened. But as Baldoni's legal team points out, she already knows exactly what's in that footage. She was in the editing bay, she had creative input on every scene, and she already used this footage once when she allegedly tried to sideline Baldoni from the project and take control of the narrative. So why ask to see it now? The answer is simple: she doesn't want to remember anything. She wants to invent something, or worse, retroactively justify her claims using footage that was never meant to support them. And the courts have seen this tactic before. That's why the Second Circuit has previously blocked similar requests, specifically to stop parties from tailoring their testimony to match the video. Because once you've seen the footage, you know exactly what not to say. You know which lies will get caught and which ones might slide under the radar. It's not about recalling trauma, it's about avoiding exposure. But Blake isn't operating alone. Stephanie Jones, the executive who allegedly provided her with private phone data from another employee, is running the same playbook. She's also stalling her deposition, also claiming she needs to see the footage, also acting as if the events she participated in or oversaw are somehow blurry in her mind. But if her company ran the smear campaign Blake is alleging, and if she really handed off sensitive data to support that smear, then there's no excuse for her silence now. She wasn't a passive observer, she was allegedly complicit. And if the rules apply to Baldoni, they must apply to her. Because let's be clear, Justin Baldoni has been painted as the villain here. From the moment Blake Lively's New York Times piece dropped, the tone was set. He was the abuser, the toxic man in power, the Hollywood manipulator. But behind the scenes, he was scrambling to hold a crumbling project together, while the people he trusted seized control of the narrative. Ryan Reynolds in particular has avoided much of the public heat, but he's in this deep. He's not just Blake's husband, he's a producer, a financier, a strategist, and maybe most importantly, a master of media. His company Maximum Effort designed the promotional campaign that turned It Ends With Us into a flashpoint for online controversy. And when that backfired, when the backlash landed squarely on Blake's shoulders, someone had to take the fall, and that's when the shift began. Suddenly Baldoni was the enemy. The production company was the scapegoat, and the media especially. Outlets like People and the New York Times seemed all too ready to echo Blake's side of the story. Why? Because the relationships are already in place. These are not neutral outlets. They rely on access, on publicist relationships, on leaks. And in Blake and Ryan's world, controlling the press is a fundamental part of the strategy. That's why the attack on content creators was so strategic. Paris Hilton, Candace Owens, Andy Signore. 3 creators, 3 independent voices, none of them mainstream journalists. All of them critical of Blake's narrative, and all of them hit with subpoenas. But here's where it gets sinister. They weren't even notified first. They found out from TMZ, the very publication that has a long documented history of being tipped off by celebrity teams before stories break. So who gave TMZ the documents? Who leaked the legal action before the recipients could even react? The answer is obvious. It was a PR move, a calculated leak, a way to humiliate and discredit these creators before they even knew what was coming, and to distract the public from what was really going on. A disintegrating case built on shaky claims. And this isn't just about internet drama, this is about precedent. If powerful celebrities can use the legal system and friendly press to subpoena, silence, and publicly smear critics, what message does that send? That dissent will be punished, that questioning the official story makes you a target, that the truth doesn't matter unless it's convenient. It's not just disturbing, it's dangerous. And the media manipulation isn't subtle. Take the Daily Mail case, for example. A reporter named James Sutka was allegedly pressured to sign a sworn statement that aligned with Blake's version of events, even though insiders claimed the statement was false. That reporter fired, quietly, no press release, no explanation. Just like that, gone, and yet no one's asking questions, because the celebrity machine keeps rolling. But now it's hitting potholes, because people are starting to see through it. Insiders are coming forward, cast and crew from past projects are speaking up. One actress who worked with Blake on the rhythm section came forward again recently to remind the public of her experience. She described the set as tense and hostile. Said Blake refused to make eye contact, that she was cold, dismissive, uninterested in collaboration, that Blake never acknowledged her off camera even during rehearsals, that the energy on set was so toxic she had to wait in the hallway just to avoid Blake's presence. This isn't a one-off. It's part of a long trail of stories that challenge the sanitized, sparkling public image Blake Lively has so carefully curated, and that image is now fraying. Because the cracks are visible, the inconsistencies are piling up, and the very people once protected by silence are now speaking loudly. This case between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni may have started as a creative dispute, but it has become something much bigger. It's become a referendum on how Hollywood power dynamics operate in the age of social media. It's a case study in how wealth and influence can be weaponized. And it's a chilling reminder of how trauma, when turned into a branding tool, can be distorted beyond recognition. The footage Blake wants to see is not about truth, it's about protection. The subpoenas aren't about justice, they're about intimidation. And the media narrative is not about transparency. It's about control, but that control is slipping. Because the internet has receipts, because audiences are smarter than PR teams give them credit for, and because the truth, no matter how carefully hidden, has a way of clawing its way to the surface. And when it does, it won't just be Blake Lively who's exposed. It will be the entire machine behind her. So here we are standing in the middle of a collapsing Hollywood illusion, one where the people with the most power are playing the victim, where trauma is treated like a marketing tactic, where legal proceedings are used not just to resolve disputes but to control public perception, and where the very platforms that once empowered these celebrities, social media, online commentary, content creators, are now being weaponized against them. The moment they speak out of line, Blake Lively isn't fighting for justice, she's fighting for her image. Her entire campaign, from the New York Times exposed to the strategic subpoena leaks, has been about rebuilding a crumbling narrative, one where she is the misunderstood actress, the silenced survivor, the woman wronged by a flawed industry. And yet the evidence, the silence from her own texts, the absence of support from people she claimed confided in, the documented contradictions, tells a different story, a story of manipulation, a story of calculated victimhood, a story of power being abused not by the accused but by the accuser. And if we look closely, that's exactly what this case is revealing, not just what happened behind the scenes of a failed film project, but how far a celebrity will go to keep the spotlight clean. Blake Lively doesn't need to see 100 hours of footage to remember what happened. She needs it so she doesn't contradict herself under oath. That's what this is about: control, optics, preservation. And what about Ryan Reynolds? Let's be honest, he's been protected. Despite being involved in financing, producing, editing, and marketing It Ends With Us, he's rarely named directly in the filings. He hides in plain sight, letting Blake take the hits publicly, while still controlling the broader campaign behind the scenes. But the evidence is catching up to him too. His interviews about owning the bomb take on a new meaning now, because this entire project, from the PR to the fallout, is his bomb. He built it. And now he's trying to drag everyone else down in the blast radius: assistants, editors, publicists, co-stars, and now content creators. Let that sink in. The same platforms that once gave Blake and Ryan power, the internet, YouTube, TikTok, are now being blamed for their failure. The same voices they used to amplify their brands are now being accused of smearing them. As if independent commentary is suddenly defamation, as if criticism is now a lawsuit. And the irony is brutal, because when Blake and Ryan wanted to sell products, launch movies, push image-friendly narratives, they loved the digital ecosystem. They relied on it. They saturated the internet with viral campaigns and fake authenticity. But now that the truth is slipping through the cracks, suddenly it's a threat. Suddenly content creators are enemies. Suddenly subpoenas are flying. Suddenly the only voices that matter are the ones they can control. But the tide is turning. The public is watching more closely. The journalists who once protected the narrative are starting to get uncomfortable. Some are being pushed out. Some are leaking what they know. Others are just refusing to play along anymore. And the witnesses, the real people who've worked with Blake and Ryan over the years, are no longer afraid to speak. That silence is breaking. And what's being revealed is damning, not just for Blake Lively, not just for Ryan Reynolds, but for the entire infrastructure that allowed them to weaponize media, suppress dissent, and use the court system like a PR agency. If Blake is allowed to view the footage before her deposition, if she's allowed to rewrite her testimony after reviewing every frame, it will set a chilling precedent. It will tell every wealthy celebrity in Hollywood that they don't have to remember the truth. They just have to find it on tape. It will turn legal accountability into performance art. It will make courtrooms the new stage. And it will make actual victims the ones without PR teams, without multi-million-dollar spouses, without friendly editors at TMZ, completely invisible, because real trauma doesn't need a reshoot. Real survivors don't need 150 hours of B-roll to tell their story. They remember. Blake doesn't. And maybe that's because it didn't happen the way she says it did. Maybe it never did. So as this case continues to unravel, one thing is clear: this isn't about justice anymore. It's about reputation warfare. And in that war, Blake and Ryan have revealed exactly who they are: not victims, not heroes, but architects of a collapsing story, a story that once fooled the media but now fools no one. And as for Baldoni, he's still standing, still showing up, still offering the only thing that can't be fabricated in court: the truth. Let's hope the judge sees it too.